Well, we've heard the warnings from a lot of people on the left about the Big Beautiful Bill, or now the Big Beautiful Act, because it has been signed into law by the President of the United States and passed along party lines. 150,000 people in the state of Maryland could be kicked off Medicaid. We've heard about that. We've heard about more cuts coming to state budgets, which means that more cuts could be coming at the state level, and who knows, maybe more local taxes increasing as well. But what about all of that? Is it true? Let's get the other side to it. We are pleased to be joined now by Delegate Matt Morgan. He is the chairman of the Maryland Freedom Caucus. Great to have you on. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thank you for having me on.
You guys wrote an op-ed in the Baltimore Sun talking about this. These things can get kind of complicated, but you tell me overall why it doesn't necessarily mean that this bill is going to force all of these problems in the state of Maryland if they come true. It may be more on the state of on the state of Maryland itself and our government. Give us the rundown of where you are on all of this, Matt.
Yeah, there's been so much fear-mongering over this bill, and it's just not right. You know, there's the other side of the story. And one of the reasons why Maryland would be facing a lot of these cuts is because of the expansion that the General Assembly has chosen to implement. The General Assembly has chosen to cover non-citizens and really expand Medicaid to the point where we're just busting at the seams. And Medicaid was originally created to help pregnant women whose significant others left them. When it was originally created, less than 2% of the population qualified. And throughout the years, the program's been expanded and went through a great deal of expansion during the COVID years, to the point where 1.8 million people in the state of Maryland was on it. Now, there's been some unwinding since COVID. There's about nearly 1.7 million people currently on Medicaid, which is roughly 27% of the population. So even if you take the gloom and doom scenarios that Democrats are saying about this, you would still have about 100 to 120,000 more people on Medicaid than just 5 years ago pre-COVID. This expansion here cost the state about $2.5 billion a year. And look, I think the safeguards that were put into the Big Beautiful Bill and how it reduces the enrollment were really smart about how they came about it. And I think this is a lot of fear-mongering.
Delegate Matt Morgan is on board with us once again, the chair of the Maryland Freedom Caucus. The commentary written by the members of the Freedom Caucus: if benefits get cut, blame Annapolis, not Washington. And one of the things in this, man, I think needs to be, talked about a lot, and people can have their problems if they want with the cost of the Big Beautiful Act, but having semi-annual eligibility checks when it comes to those on Medicaid instead of annual eligibility checks. In other words, if you have outdated paperwork or whatever, it's costing a lot of money, where you can catch people who are coming off Medicaid quicker if you're checking twice a year than once a year.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Seaport. And basically, we're trying to preserve the program for the people that actually need it. And during COVID, it was such a wild expansion. Right now in the state of Maryland, if it's a family of four, a parent and three children under the age of 18, the cap on income limit is $103,000. And the first thing you might be asking is like, well, if you make $103,000, you probably have access to employer-based care. And look, and there's a bunch of people that hit the income limit and they're out of Medicaid. They shouldn't be on it. And really, the Big Beautiful Bill, it's trying to really just cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse. It makes reductions three ways. It's semi-annual re-enrollment. It introduces work requirements, the same that we currently use at SNAP. It's been very, and we've had SNAP work requirements for 30 years. And then the second thing it does, or the third thing it does, it cuts the federal match for anyone that's been expanded to non-citizens. And that's where Democrats are really having a hard time, and a lot of the people that are being removed fall into that category. And I find that odd because, for years, maybe even my entire life, they told us that non-citizens were not on.
Exactly. They said it's false. They said you're creating a straw argument is when you bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that's not being talked about by Democrats at all is makes cuts to the SNAP program. It doesn't cut benefits. It cuts the administrative costs. So it makes the states have more skin in the game when they have higher error rate, meaning they are handing benefits out to people that didn't deserve them. And I'll give you an example. In 2022, just 3 years ago, Maryland's error rate was 35%.
Wow.
Now, it makes cuts to any state that has over a 6% error rate. Now, to be fair, the state's gotten a little bit better. In 2023, the error rate was only 18%.
Only.
So we still have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
It is an incredible number. As you say, 27% of Marylanders are receiving Medicaid in some
That's
fashion now?
incredible.
Yes.
All right, so 27% of the state receiving Medicaid. Under the changes, though, and I also understand one of the things that Republicans in the House talked about was this was going to be more paperwork. It might weed out people, and so you're going to get fewer numbers in that aspect as well. At the end of the day, do we have an idea of how many people will ultimately be able to get Medicaid in the state of Maryland, what that number will go down to from 27% to what, Matt?
Yeah, it's going to be somewhere around 1.5 million. Would
Okay.
still be, and that's after like the worst case scenario of all the cuts.
So like
you're still
200,000
looking at
people will
100
lose Medicaid, is what we're saying?
Yeah, and that's what the prediction is.
Okay.
But look at it this way: those people that are losing it should have never been on it in the first place. In many cases, so they fall into three categories: either they're gonna income limit out, or they're non-citizens, or it's when they implement the work requirements, it's people that refuse to get up off the couch. Like those work requirements that are implemented are very lenient.
Well, to back you up, Delegate Matt Morgan, I've shared before in these airways, when I was elected to the House of Delegates in 95, that was right during the time of the Clinton-Newt Gingrich Welfare Reform Act. And I served on the Joint Committee on Welfare Reform. I stayed there in the House, and when I went to the Senate, I said over a 5-year period of time, Delegate Matt Morgan, we saw welfare rolls reduced by 70%, and people were not living in the streets. They weren't, dying of hunger and starvation. What it was you had to either have a job setting within the 5-year period of time or an educational setting within a 5-year period of time. It encouraged responsibility, and guess what? It worked, Matt Morgan.
Well, it's not compassionate to make people dependent. And I'll tell you, I'll give you another example, because that was a great example. This has been tried in the past. It was signed into law, as you mentioned, by Bill Clinton, I believe back in 1996. Mm-hmm. And it's been extremely successful. It's getting people out back into the workforce and making them self-reliant. And that's what we really want. I mean, free people, self-dependent people are happier people. You look at a state that didn't do a lot of these Medicaid expansions during COVID, and that's our neighbor right across the river from me, Virginia. And I don't see kids starving and people dying in the street over there. It looks like a very successful state. And, Medicaid, like I said, we spend about $2.5 billion more than we did a few years ago.
Right.
Because of these expansions. And you look at the budget situation that Maryland is in, we had the largest tax increase in Maryland history.
I don't know. I thought it was a tax cut. I was told it was 94% got their taxes cut, or
not raised.
Or not
he
raised
never
at all.
mentions the 350 fee increases that he
It's amazing
implemented during his
huh?
administration.
All right, let me ask you about that, because I think it is kind of funny. Is that this bill, the big beautiful bill, big beautiful act that the Democrats hated and not one voted for? If you live in Maryland, Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to give you more money in your back pocket than Wes Moore. Is that not true?
Oh, absolutely. Wes Moore is taking money out. He comes out and says that 94% of Marylanders are going to see a tax cut or no increase or whatever the talking point that he's hitting. And basically he's talking about income taxes, because he ended up creating two new brackets. He called it a millionaire's tax, but started it off at $500,000. So if you're getting a tax cut, I think the average reduction is like $48, and very few people apply for that. Meanwhile, your car registration, I just registered my truck. It was $191 for the year. There's been over 350 different fee increases over the last 2 years. In the last two budgets, I mean, they have sucked about $2 billion out of the private economy. That's how much taxes have gone up in the state of Maryland. And at some point, we need to reduce the size of government and start giving people their hard-earned money back.
Well, look at the
Because this is
vehicle emissions fee,
unsustainable.
Delegate. The vehicle emissions fee went from $14 to $30 overnight.
Before we raised taxes this year on seniors getting fishing licenses. You know? I mean,
You can't make it up. You cannot make this stuff up.
All right, Delegate, let me ask you this, politically speaking. And do you think that this is actually good news for Westmore? And I say that because does it force the state then to kind of save money, or they don't
Right.
have to push it out, and it's their excuse to say that it is done by the federal government, has done these things, and the federal government is essentially coming in and cutting some portion of the
point.
state budget, and it ultimately might actually work in favor of taxpayers, but also in favor of Westmore, because he'll be able to do more of his signature legislation that he wants.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this really bails them out of their failed policies. When we were in session in Annapolis, it was nothing but gloom and doom. And I think 100% of us thought that we were coming back in the September, early October to raise taxes again because the state is in just that bad of a fiscal shape. And keep in mind, we're the only state in the region dealing with this. Virginia, Delaware, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, they all had budget surplus.
They sent checks back to their constituents.
Fell into this category. And I think this big, beautiful bill really bails the state out. It saves us money. And it covers up a lot of holes for the bad decisions coming out of Annapolis.
Delegate Matt Morgan, great to speak with you. Once again, he's chair of the Maryland Freedom Caucus. The commentary written here, if benefits get cut, blame Annapolis, not Washington. I'm going to reach out to you again, Delegate Morgan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Delegate.
I appreciate
Appreciate
it, man.
you.
Thank you guys for having me on, and keep cool.